Test, test. Everyone can hear me? All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, Lausanne. It's been a while now. It's been a year. It's great to see you all in these tough times. And before starting with my talk, I'd like to tell you a little story, the backstory behind it. A few months ago, I was doing a penetration testing at a client, and I don't know for you all, but I have like a to-do list of maybe 20 or 200 links, blog posts, slides to read, to research. Of course, I never do this because the list is too long, but it's there. I keep it all there. If someone like me is doing some bookmarks on Twitter, you know it's useless, but you still do it anyway. That's me. And I was doing a penetration test, and in my bookmarks, I had 2 links that I really wanted to research and understand. And those were a diamond ticket in the rough, which was a variation of the golden ticket for Kerberos. And the other one was how to do resource-based constraint delegation with a normal user, something written by James Forshaw. And if you don't know him already, he's the kind of guy that writes something you will never understand, even if you read it 20 times. So it was there, it was just standing there. And during my penetration test, standard thing, you just plug yourself, your domain admin in 2 minutes or so. And I had some time, and I wanted to research it, and I had the good opportunity to do it because I could do RBCD, but I didn't control a computer account. And for those of you who manipulate Kerberos on the day-to-day, they know that doing RBCD with a normal user account is something that sometimes could be really useful. So I was just researching it, and then I was reading it, implementing it, and while I was implementing it, I was like, man, there's something to do with, we could combine those 2 ideas of the diamond ticket and the normal user RBCD stuff. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk to you right now. So the title of this conference is A Ticket Worth Waiting 65 Years For. My name is Charlie Bromberg, and I've lived this slide for a few seconds. If you want to access the slide deck, it's right here, shutdown.page.link/ins23, INS23. 1, 2, 3, let's go. So here is the table of contents. The first thing is we'll do some reminder, some refresher course about Active Directory in Kerberos. By a show of hands, who is manipulating Active Directory on a day-to-day basis? Few people. Don't be shy. Someone that knows a little bit about Active Directory by a show of hands? That's a bit more. All right. And who among you perfectly understands Kerberos? Please shout if you do. All right. So that's what I thought. I didn't shout. The second part will be forging tickets. We'll talk about golden tickets, silver tickets, MS14068. It's the kind of stuff that's so old you'll never find a useful resource on the internet. So I'll talk about it. And then we'll talk about diamond tickets, which is a nice variation of the golden ticket, and sapphire tickets. But just before talking about sapphire tickets, we'll do some requirements, theoretical parts, which are S4U2Self extension, user-to-user authentication, and then the combination of those 2. Just for some timekeeping, by the time I'm finished with S4U2Self plus U2U, you'll probably be asleep. So I'll just do a reminder to, get back on the conference. And at the end, I will wrap things up, and we'll probably have some time for a Q&A. Don't be too excited. The demo gods are never with me, so the demos are pre-recorded. It's screenshots, but I did it. It's tested, and but sadly I didn't exchange with Microsoft until 1 a.m. this morning, like Dirkan did. So this is me. Yep. Other colors, but that's all right. My name is Charlie Bromberg. You may also know me on the social networks, or if you don't, that's all right, by the nickname Shutdown. If you reverse it, that's my Twitter handle. My day job is I work at Capgemini as a head of pentest. That's just the title, but what I do day to day is technically lead the change for our penetration testing offerings. So I mean, that's there. If you want to talk about penetration testing, that's my stuff. If you want to talk about detection and mitigation, please don't talk to me. My night jobs are listed there. You may know some resources or tools that I have created or contributed to, naming a few: the Hacker Recipes, which is a set of theoretical and practical guides on hacking, of course, but you'll find some Easter eggs as well. Exegol, which is, by show of hands, who uses Kali Linux? All right, you can stop using Kali Linux and start using Exegol now. Not wanting to be mean, but I mean, we are all professionals here. And my known locations is here. I live in the south of France, meaning that to come here, I had two choices: either come by train, which would have been cancelled with the strikes going on, or come by car. So if you see me yawning, that's because I came by car, and I'm really tired. So let's get to it now. Active Directory and Kerberos. Let's do some reminder. Active Directory, when we're talking about AD, we usually refer to ADDS, which is Active Directory Domain Services. But it's not limited to this. We have ADDS, ADCS, ADFS, ADSS, ADBLS, whatever. And those services are usually very connected, and the domain services is usually the core. It allows users, groups, devices, permissions, whatever, to work between themselves. And then you have some things that revolve around it, like certificate services, federation services, site services, and whatever. Active Directory Domain Services allows users and groups and resources to coexist. And in order to do that, in order to allow that, it implements authentication protocols, network authentication protocols. So to name a few, NTLM and Kerberos are the two major ones. By a show of hands, who know the exact difference between NTLM and Kerberos? Okay, I'll remind it. NTLM works in a three-way handshake manner. The client asks the domain control, the access to a service. It negotiates the authentication. The service sends a challenge. This challenge is hashed and whatever, and this proves that the user has knowledge of its password. And then the service verifies that data with the domain controller. On Kerberos, it works a bit differently. It works with tickets, and the user that wants to access a resource communicates with the KDC, the Key Distribution Center, beforehand. It obtains something called a TGT, which is a ticket granting ticket, and this first ticket allows to obtain service tickets, which are the tickets that must be presented to the services we want to have access to. On NTLM, the core of NTLM, the secrets behind NTLM are NT and LM hashes. This must not be confused with NTLM, net NTLM. Those are very different things. I'll talk about it more later on. On Kerberos, the secrets Kerberos relies on are of four types: DS, RC4, AES 128, and 256. And there's only one common key between NTLM and Kerberos. It's the NT hash, which corresponds to the RC4 key. All right. So here I'd like to talk to you about something, is the difference on the offensive point of view between NTLM and Kerberos. What you might see here is that for NTLM we have a few attacks, like NTLM relay, NTLM capture, pass the hash, and for Kerberos you have, like, I don't know how many shenanigans and offensive point of views there. Please don't exit Insomniac thinking that Kerberos is more vulnerable than NTLM. NTLM is dog shit. Please don't use it. Disable it, please. What I want to do here is just highlight the fact that Kerberos, having only Kerberos, is not keeping you safe. It's not perfect out of the box. You have to configure it, you have to harden it. And Kerberos is vulnerable to some abuses. So, to name a few: pre-authentication brute force, pass the ticket, pass the cache, whatever, pass the certificate, overpass the hash, golden and silver tickets, I'll talk to you about it, ASREP roast, Kerberos, and whatnot. Those vulnerabilities are listed in a mind map that I listed here, and you probably can't see it, so I invite you to go to the link and see the mind map in a bigger form. Don't mix up terminology. between NTLM, NTLM, net NTLM, and whatever, please, if you think you are not sure about the terms you are using, refer to this mind map. And if you are sure you are using the right terminology, refer to this mind map. So now let's talk a bit about Kerberos authentication. It works in three major steps. The first one is the pre-authentication. The first step allows the user that wants to access a resource to obtain the first ticket, the TGT. This ticket is linked to this user. It includes everything about the user. And in order to obtain this TGT that later on allows to obtain other tickets, the user must prove that he has knowledge of his password. So this is the pre-authentication step. On a side note, this can be disabled for some users, but I'm not going to go into the details of this. This is called as proposed. Then, once the user has the TGT, he will be able to use it if he has his own session key. And the TGT includes something called a PAC, Privilege Attribute Certificate. And in this PAC, you'll find all the information regarding the user. So his identifier, the groups he's member of, etc., etc., his various flags and various settings about the user. So when he has this TGT, by presenting this TGT to the key distribution center, usually the domain controller, he'll be able to obtain service tickets. And those service tickets, not to be confused with TGS, which TGS is a service, not a ticket, this ST allows to access services. It allows to authenticate over services. And then the service itself, once receiving the ticket and once decrypting it, is able to tell if the user has the right or not to access it. So it's two different steps. The first one, user authenticates to the service, and then the service gives access or not. This is Kerberos. These are Kerberos tickets. What's the difference between TGT and service tickets? Well, the difference it's a little difference. The tickets are the same, they have the same structure, they include the same PAC. The only difference is the service name, the S name. In the ticket, the S name refers to the target service the ticket is issued for. For TGT, the target service is the KRB-TGT, which is the central authority for Kerberos. And for service tickets, the service name, the target service, well, it refers to the target service. So, for example, here on the service tickets, I gave the example of CIFS server.domain.local, which is the target service. Another difference here is the PAC. In the TGT, the Privileged Attribute Certificate is protected by the KRB-TGT long-term key, which is the password variation, the password derivation. And on service tickets, the PAC is protected with the target service long-term key, which, if you understood the difference between TGT and ST, it's exactly the same thing. On TGT, the target service is the KRB-TGT, so the PAC is protected with its long-term key. So that's the difference between TGTs and service tickets. It's minimal. All right. Now that you have perfectly understood the differences between NTLM and Kerberos and how Kerberos works in Active Directory domain services, perfectly understood the differences between TGTs and service tickets, we can move on to forging those tickets. Shortly put, if we are able to forge tickets, valid tickets, we should be able to access services or act on behalf of someone else. So the first step here is we'll talk about silver tickets. By show of hands, who knows what a silver ticket is already? All right, some people already. So I'll still explain it. What we know when we need to build, what we need to know when we build silver tickets is the target service long-term key. When we build a silver ticket, we actually build a service ticket, an ST. To remind this, it's very easy. Silver tickets, acronym ST, service ticket, ST, So what we need to know is the target service long-term key. We also need to know the domain SID, the username, the user error ID, whatever we want to put in the privilege attribute certificate in the PAC. So for instance, if we want to act as the domain admin, we have to find the domain admin's username, its error ID, all his attributes, and put them all in the PAC. And we'll be able to forge the PAC since we know the secret key that should be used to encrypt it, which is the target service long-term key. I included some notes here. When we forge a silver ticket, some detection notes, we have no communication at all with the KDC. So there's that. It's a nice touch. So for detection software, it's a bit harder to detect maybe. But again, I'm not a detection expert, so please don't ask me questions about it. And then another note is that silver ticket in some cases can be used when doing some lateral movement or privilege escalation, whereas golden ticket is usually referred to a persistence technique. Why? It's because the silver ticket allows to access a service, and if we know this service is long-term key, which is a key that's easier to obtain, we'll be able to access that service as an admin, for example. So on the diagram, you'll see exactly what I explained here. The first step is the attacker forges his silver ticket, makes an access request by giving his silver ticket to the target service, and then the target service decrypts the pack with his own long-term key, sees that the pack reflects the values of the domain admin, and the domain admin usually has administrator access to the service, so we're good to go. Here is the demo. So I included some screenshots, and everything I'm going to show you is with Linux, or at least with Python with Impacket. If you want me to show you some examples of how we use Rubius, well, I won't. So please don't talk to me about using Windows. I don't use Windows. I break it. So the first step is we have to obtain the SID, which is the unique security identifier of the domain. You'll see it here. It's S1521, blah, blah, blah. This SID, once we know it, and once we know the target service SPN, which is the value that refers to the target service, and we know the target service long-term key, we can mix that up in the ticketer command line here, and we'll generate a ticket. So it's something called somerandomuser.ccache. Do we want to analyze that ticket? Yes, we want to understand how it's structured. So here's the first step. I'm using describe ticket, which is another script of Impacket. I'm not sure it's been merged already. Not sure. But I mean, it's there somewhere on the internet. And by giving the target service long-term key, we'll be able to decrypt ourselves the pack, the ticket, and see the values that we indeed have forged a valid silver ticket. We can see here that the service name refers to host/sv1.domain.local, which is our target service. And if we go into the pack, we can see that the user error ID is 500, which usually refers to the domain admin, the built-in domain admin. We can see the group ID, group error IDs. We can see, for example, that he's member of the domain admins, Shama admins. Well, this is a domain admin. So with this pack, with this forged pack and this forged ticket, we should be able to access the service. That's what I'm showing you here. In the bottom part of the screenshot, you can see that I'm using secrets dump to do a credential dumping, remote credential dumping on SV1. It works. Everything in green are the credentials. And on the upper part of the screenshot, I tried to do the same thing with another target service, which was the domain controller. It didn't work because if I want to target another service, I'll have to forge another service ticket. So that's the silver ticket. Let's now talk about the golden ticket. The golden ticket is very similar, but instead of forging a ticket for a specific service, we forge a ticket for the KBGDT, we forge a TGT, and this allows us to ask for any service ticket. So it's very similar. What we need to know is not it's still the target service's long-term key, and here the target service is KBGDT, so we need to know his LT key. What we build here is the same thing. We build a forged pack in a forged ticket. And in the diagram on the right, you can see that the first step is the attacker forges his TGT, his golden ticket, uses this TGT, his forged TGT, to obtain a service ticket for a target service, and then use that service ticket to access said service. Some notes here. As of November 2021, Microsoft updated some things, and now in the ticket, we have to give a valid username. right before, and here in those screenshots, I'm using some random user, which doesn't exist in my Active Directory setup. But as of November 2021, for updated domain controllers, you'll have to use a valid username. The problem with Golden Ticket, it's been here for a while. People know about it. They know how to detect it. I mean, most of them. So high detection probabilities, and you have a high probability also of messing up the pack. Since you forge everything, you forge the ticket, you forge the pack, well, if there's a mismatch somewhere, ticket duration, expiration, whatever, the flags, well, you'll be detected. So that's the issue with Golden Ticket, and that's the reason behind the Diamond Ticket ID, which is an improvement over the Golden Ticket. This issue is mitigated with something called Golden Copy, which is a utility that relies on Neo4j databases for Bloodhound, and it retrieves all the information about the target user to impersonate and prepares a ticketer command so that you don't mess up your pack. But still, you'll have default values put by some scripts, and you'll have a high probability of messing up things. Some screenshots, same thing. First step, we get the SID of the domain. Second step, we forge the Golden Ticket. Now, we don't need the target SPN anymore, since we are not building a service ticket, we are building a TGT. And if we analyze that ticket, we can see that the service name here is krbtgt/domain.local, which means we are working here with a TGT. In the pack, you'll see the exact same thing as before. We are indeed acting as the domain admin. If we use it, now it's the little difference. We can still do some remote credential dumping on SVO1, but we have also the ability to do this with the domain controller. Since we are acting as a domain admin with his TGT, we are able to obtain any service ticket we want. Now, let's talk a bit about MS14068. By a show of hands, who has heard about this vulnerability? Who wants to explain it here? No one knows how it works. It's very complicated, and the main reason behind it is that the resources that exist on the internet there are a few of them. Not now, since a few years ago or months ago, I'm not sure, Hack the Box, which is a learning platform, introduced a machine that was vulnerable to this. So now you are able to find some write-ups about it. But I mean, it's still not as documented as other more recent attacks. On a side note, this is a vulnerability. This is not an abuse. What this means is that on patched machines, this will not work. It's not an abuse, a logical abuse. It's a vulnerability, meaning it was patched. In Microsoft parlance, this was not a feature. So it referred to CVE 2014-6324, and I'll not go into the details about the crypto behind it because, no, please don't ask questions about crypto. What we need to know here are domain SID, user credentials, SID, etc. The main difference with golden tickets, silver tickets, etc. is that we need valid credentials in the domain. That's it. And we need to have a vulnerable KDC, of course, something that wasn't patched. What we do here will rely on the diagram on the right. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, so I'll just do some audio description. The first step is we want to obtain a TGT for a standard user. That's the first step. So let's say the standard user is called Bob. Bob obtains his own TGT. Then, side note, the TGT must be requested without a pack. That's it. Then, the attacker proceeds to forging a pack, just like the golden ticket attack. And then he'll be able to put that pack, that forged pack, into the valid TGT for Bob, which means that TGT will be valid, it will be signed, everything will be fine, but it will include a pack that makes him act as a domain admin. So we'll have a superpower TGT. Then, just like the golden ticket, no, not just like the golden ticket, sorry. Once the TGT, the MS14068 ticket is forged, we will proceed to ask for a TGT, but not with a standard TGT request. We'll do this with a service ticket request. That's a bit different, but I mean, now you know it. And once we have the TGT issued by the service ticket request, we'll be able to ask for other service tickets. That's it. I mean, if you want to go into more details about it, I wrote some things in thehacker.recipes. Let's see how it works. First step, I'm using RPC client to find the unprivileged user SID. My unprivileged user is James, and his SID is here. It ends with 1103. Once we have this SID, we use ms14068.py script, which is from the pykek repo, if I remember correctly. And by using James' credentials, his username and his password, as well as his SID, we'll talk with the domain controller, do the steps detailed before in the diagram, and obtain something here, which is a ticket for James. We can see here that the username is James. But if we inspect the pack, we can see that now James is member of many overpower groups. So we'll be able to act as the domain admin, but we're James. But, I mean, ms14068, that's it. If we use the ticket, we are, just like golden tickets, able to dump things from the domain controller. This is an example on the hack-the-box machine, which is called Mantis. So if you want to do this at home, you have the ability to do so by firing up the Mantis machine on hack-the-box. Now let's talk about diamond tickets. We talked about silver, golden, and the MS14068 vulnerability. What is the golden ticket? By show of hands, who has heard or seen the blog post of Andy Schwartz and Charlie Clark about the diamond ticket in the rough? Okay, some people. Who have read it? Yep. Who understood it? Yeah, of course. Dirk Jan, you're not in the equation. All right, let's talk about diamond tickets. So, what we need to know, what the requirements behind the diamond ticket are very similar to the golden tickets. The only addition here is we have to know active credentials. And the main difference between golden tickets and diamond tickets is we are forging something on the fly. Instead of forging the ticket, forging the TGT, forging the pack, etc., we are using a valid ticket. We are just replacing on the fly the right values so that we are not messing up, like I said before, the pack values, the ticket values, etc. So here in the diagram on the right, we are asking for an unprivileged user ticket, still Bob. Once we obtain the TGT for Bob, we intercept it locally. We just mess around, forged a golden ticket-like pack, and include it in the ticket. And for some more advanced implementations of this technique, we are not replacing fully the pack. We are just decrypting the pack and replacing the right values inside of it. So that's it. That's how diamond ticket works. And once this is done, you have something very similar to a golden ticket, but better. Some notes here. The theory behind the diamond ticket is that the pack is modified, not fully replaced. The thing is, in real life, in packet implementation, the pack is fully forged. So this is an issue because you still have some probability of messing up things in the pack. So if someone here does some Python, GPT-4, whatever, please improve this script. I don't have the time nor courage to do so. So the conclusion of the diamond ticket technique is that ticket mucho bueno, which means like, unlike the golden ticket, the probability of messing up things in the pack is a bit lower. However, you're doing active things on the network, so there's that. If you are inspecting Windows events on the domain controller, whatever, and things go up very quickly, I mean, that's some detection possibility right here. Here's how it works. In order to forge the ticket, you still do the same thing. You use Ticketer. Ticketer does this. As I said, it's not perfect, but it does this. You just have to add the dash request flag, which indicates that you are using active credentials in the domain, and you'll be doing some diamond ticket here. And then in the second highlight, you'll see the credentials I'm using. And once this is done, you are with your new daemon ticket. We can see here the service name still indicates KRB-TGT, so we are working with a TGT. And if we inspect the pack, we'll see, just like the golden ticket, a fully forged pack. And that's the issue here. Rubius, I think, doesn't do this and replaces the right values inside the pack. Impacket just gives a new pack, fully forged. Same thing as the golden ticket. We are working with a OP TGT. We can do anything we want, as long as the domain admin has the rights. Here is the implementation limit. So now there's no excuse for you to do this. Line 323 in Ticketer, you'll find that whether we are working with the request flag or not, the pack is fully forged with the create basic pack function. This is the issue. We should have something like, if we are not using dash request, we are forging something from the ground up. And if we are working with the dash request, we are just modifying the right values. That's it. However, Ticketer is not exactly coded for that at the moment. All right, now that we have understood the diamond ticket technique, shortly put, the diamond ticket just does a golden ticket on the fly with a valid ticket, replacing the right values at the right time, at the right place. Let's talk a bit about more Kerberos shenanigans. That's where you have the ability to sleep and to rest, because I don't expect to have understanding of what I'm going to explain. This is very difficult, and I'm not sure I understand it perfectly as of today, so please look elsewhere, go in track 2 and come back later on. Don't ask questions about it. That's it. First thing, we are talking about service for user extensions. These extensions are the inner mechanisms behind Kerberos delegations, constrained Kerberos delegations. That's it. When we are doing constrained Kerberos delegation, KCD or RBCD, what we are doing is S for you to self and or S for you to proxy. If you want to understand it more, I did a talk last year about exactly that, about Kerberos delegations, so you'll find more information on the replay, and you'll also find some information on Elad Shamir's awesome article called Wagging the Dog, which was published right back in 2019, and he explains it very well. What we have to keep in mind here that is S for you to self, S for you to proxy are extensions allowing to obtain a ticket on behalf of someone else. That's something a bit different. What we saw earlier on the TGT, the service ticket, the golden ticket, whatever, is that we were obtaining something for ourselves, or, with forged values. With delegation, this is a feature. We have the ability to obtain tickets on behalf of someone else, to act on behalf of someone else. Of course, there are securities in place to make sure that there's not any rando that can generate a ticket for domain admin or whatever, but there's that. There's the feature. And now for the difference between S for you to self and proxy, well, S for you to self allows to obtain a delegation ticket for oneself. So you have a service ticket impersonating, let's say, domain admin, but this service ticket can be used on yourself. That's it. And proxy allows it for another service. So you are requesting a service ticket on behalf of another user targeting another service. And why those two exist? Well, it's usually to allow some security, to have to split the steps of the constrained delegations, to make sure that you have the right, you are configured for delegation, you obtain a ticket for yourself on behalf of someone else, use it for S3 proxy, etc., etc. But I won't go into much more details about these. What you have to keep in mind here is S for yourself. S for yourself allows to obtain a service ticket for yourself on behalf of another principal, of another user. One condition is that if you want to do this, you must have an SPN. You must be configured as a service account. Now, let's put this on the side and talk about user-to-user authentication. This has nothing to do with delegation. No Kerberos delegation at all in user-to-user extension. in user-to-user authentication, sorry. What U2U does is that it allows to obtain a service ticket for a service that is not a service, that is a user. So instead of, like, it's like you obtain a user ticket. You obtain a service ticket for a user. And this allows usually for smaller infrastructures that don't want to boot up a service account for a service. They just want to rely on user accounts. Well, it allows user 1 to access user 2, user 2's services. And in order to do that, U2U. How it works, Bob wants to access Alice. In order to do that, Bob asks Alice for her TGT. Alice gives the TGT to Bob. Bob cannot act as Alice because he needs the session key to use the TGT, and Alice doesn't give the session key along the TGT. And once Bob has the TGT, Bob can do a U2U request a service ticket for Alice by supplying Alice's TGT in the request, proving that he has indeed the right to act on Alice. And that's it. Now, Bob has a service ticket to Alice, and Bob and Alice are two users. So now, let's see the combination of S for yourself and U2U. S for yourself plus U2U allows a user, let's say Bob, to obtain a service ticket on another user for another user, let's say Alice, on behalf of a third user, let's say the domain admin. And there's no SPN needed in this technique. This allows for a few things, and on the offensive perspective, this allows for 3 attacks known as SPN-less RBCD, which was published by James Forshaw a few months ago, last year. It allows also for unpack the hash, which is related to PK init attacks, to certificate attacks. It also allows for the Sapphire ticket technique, which is the latest variation improvement of the golden ticket technique. And there's a diagram here. What we do as the attacker is 1, TGT request. We obtain a TGT for ourselves. Once we have this TGT, we include it in the request later on, and we build the service ticket request. Erratum, what I said before was a bit wrong. We are not, when we are combining S for yourself plus U2U, we are not obtaining a service ticket for another user. We are obtaining a service ticket for ourselves on behalf of another user. So in the request here, in the service ticket request combining S for yourself and U2U, the client's name, the name of the user that wants access, is attacker. The name of the user we want to have access to is attacker, since we are doing S for yourself. PA for user, it refers to the user we want to impersonate, act on behalf of, which is here the domain admin. And additional tickets here for the U2U, we need to include the attacker TGT, since the attacker is the target of our service request. This is done. S for yourself plus U2U, we have to combine the multiple flags and so on. And so once we have this, well, you can see here, in the S for yourself plus U2U service ticket answer, we have something very special. It's the domain admin's pack with all the right values in it. And this is what we'll use for the Sapphire ticket. Sapphire ticket coming right here. We are doing the same thing as the diamond ticket. We are modifying things on the fly with a valid TGT, with a valid ticket. But instead of forging values and creating a mismatch, we are replacing the valid pack with another valid pack, but of a powered user, of a powerful user. So what this does is, like, instead of having a pack indicating that Bob is a member of the domain admin's group, which is false, we have a pack indicating that domain admin is a member of the domain admin's group, which is right. It's legit. And what we have there is a valid, a legit TGT and a legit pack. Legit everything. So ticket mucho bueno, pack mucho bueno, perfect. Unlike the golden ticket, the ticket is perfect, and unlike the diamond ticket, the pack is perfect, and we have no mismatch whatsoever between the UAC, the flags, the groups, the RIDs, the username, and whatever. So the Sapphire ticket allows to produce something that's very similar to the legitimate domain admin's TGT. But in order to do that, we have the same requirements as the diamond ticket technique. We need golden tickets requirement, which is the KRB TGT if we want to forge a TGT, and active credentials, since we are doing things on the fly. And detection be like, ugh. Let's do this in practice. First step, we have to use Ticketer. Same thing, we fire up lookup SID to obtain the right SIDs, etc. And then we just include valid credentials here. And we just add the only difference here between Diamond and Sapphire tickets is the flag impersonate. And here, I'm indicating to Ticketer that I want to impersonate domain admin. What this does is, first step, request S for yourself plus U2U, as I explained before, to obtain domain admin spec. The combination of those two shenanigans just allow for one simple thing, obtain domain admin spec. And once we have this spec, we just push it in the valid ticket of user 2. So here in the second step, decrypting ticket, extracting pack, clearing signatures, whatever, we are putting the new pack in the legit ticket, and we have legit ticket, legit pack, legit all. We are all happy. If we describe it, we can see that the KRB TGT here is the target service, indicating that we are working with a TGT. The target domain is domain.local, so we are working with a TGT on domain local's domain as domain admin, so everything is nice. And here we have everything is legit. We have the user flags here, we have the right groups, we have the right RID, we have the right user account control, UAC, we have the right extra SID, resource group, domain SID, blah, blah, blah. Everything is perfect. We have the perfect ticket, perfect pack, and detection is like blah. And this is how it's used. Same thing as the golden ticket. It can be used to dump whatever, as long as the rights, the domain user you're impersonating has rights. Well, you'll have those. Here is a small limitation of the implementation. First thing first, I implemented this in Ticketer, and well, I'm not a developer. I write shit, and this is the proof. There's one limitation with Ticketer today, which is that Ticketer extracts all the pack structures and rebuilds it from scratch. What this means is that if there are some structures in the pack that Packet doesn't support, the ticket will be not full. Some structures will be skipped. So, same thing here. I don't have nor the time nor the courage to tackle this. If you want to implement something perfect, well, you have my blessing. So now let's wrap things up. 43 minutes, perfect. If you want to go further, for Sapphire ticket limitations, well, there's the first thing. It requires active credentials. So it's not the perfect persistence technique, because you cannot extract things and get back to the domain 1 year later. And if everything has changed, well, you will not be able to do the Sapphire ticket technique because you need active credentials. We know Active Directory to be a bit vulnerable to many things if it's not configured properly. So obtaining valid username and password on the domain is not the hardest thing, but you still need it. Also, it produces a bit more network traffic. You have some S for yourself, U2U, service ticket request, blah, blah, TGT request, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of traffic. So for detection software around here, here's a possibility. You can look at the various network traffic. Some solutions to the problems I raised is, first, Rubius has something, I saw it while preparing this talk tonight, which was the /LDAP and /printCMD flags, which allow to obtain the right values without S for yourself and U2U, but instead on relying on LDAP queries. This is a bit similar to the golden copy alternative I showed you earlier, which then doesn't rely on Neo4j databases, but then does dynamically queries LDAP to find the right information, the groups the target user is member of, etc., to build a nearly perfect ticket. So there's that. Second thing, I don't like surprise questions, so this is probably the only technical thing I'll be able to answer. Why call it Sapphire? Why is the title to this con wait 65 years, blah, blah, blah? Well, it's a gemstone story. For those of you who don't know Jubilees, well, there's a list, Wikipedia. We already have the silver, golden, diamond ticket. I found it logic to call the next variation Sapphire. If someone here finds the perfect ID for the platinum ticket, again, you have my blessing. Please don't implement things like I do with many holes in it. Foreseeing questions number 2. Again, mitigation, detection. I'm not an expert. So I don't do that personally, but here are some paths you can explore. The first thing is there's 2 categories if you want to detect or mitigate. The first thing is analyze the forged ticket itself. If it has the wrong username, as I said earlier, for patched domain controllers as of November 2021 updates, a username in the ticket that doesn't exist in Active Directory domain, well, it will be rejected. If the pack fields are malformed, blank, missing, whatever, well, you can detect it. So this concerns silver and golden. However, for diamond and sapphire tickets, using these techniques, you are safe because the values in the pack are usually good values. They're not malformed. And if you have a pack mismatch, there's another detection here. So for example, let's say that the pack says that we are working with Bob, but on the other hand, it says that Bob is member of the domain admins group. Well, there's that. Bob is not a domain admin, but he's member of the domain admins group. There's an issue. Well, Sapphire technique goes through that. There's no problem. Another way of detecting those is detection around the ticket, not the ticket itself. So look for KRBGDT theft, suspicious tools and techniques, suspicious behavior, the usual stuff. But you can also look at logon hours. So if there's S3 plus U2U plus a TGT plus service ticket request at 2 a.m. in the morning, there's probably something wrong. Some acknowledgements. I really want to thank many people for issuing the research behind this technique, which is not very difficult. In fact, I just assembled some pieces I found somewhere else. So first thing first, I want to thank Charlie Clark and Andrew Schwartz for writing a diamond ticket in the rough, which explains in details the diamond ticket technique. I also want to notify that Alberto Solino found the Sapphire ticket technique back in 2016. I didn't know of it, but while preparing the slides, I noticed in the ticketer.py script, there was a comment in the to-do list saying, when request is specified, we could ask for a user-to-user ticket and also populate the received pack. He had the ID for the Sapphire ticket back in 2016. It was never implemented. That's it. So I found something that someone found before. Right. That's okay. It just hurts. But that's okay. I also want to thank Elad Shamir's awesome article for wagging the dog. There's that. I used it for preparing a Kerberos delegation talk. Also want to thank James Forshaw for writing an excellent article about how to do RBCD with a normal user account. It explains some things about S3 itself and U2U. Also want to thank a good friend of mine, which was and still is an inspiration, both on the technical side and human side of things, which is Romain Pixis. But you'll also find some technical information that he wrote, very relevant stuff on his blog post, on his blog hackanddo.com. That's it. You have some sources and links in the slides, some glossary, some tooling. On a side note, again, Exegol, hacker recipes. Yep. And that's it. Q&A time. Anyone has questions? You can wake up now.
All right. So if you have any question, please raise your hand so either me or my colleague can bring you the microphone.
You can still try to ask questions about mitigation and detection. I'm just not giving any guarantees. That's it. No question? Well, it was very clear. You understood everything perfectly.
Hello. For you, what is the better when we attack cross-domain, parent and child domain trust bidirectional? What is the better golden
Choice.
ticket, golden choice, golden ticket or sapphire ticket?
Well, it depends. Those 4 tickets, silver, golden, blah, blah, blah. Let's just put silver aside. You said parent-child domain trust, so you're in the same forest. Just a reminder, Microsoft states that the security boundary is the forest, so everything inside the forest you could usually escalate and stuff. So, but then it depends, because Sapphire ticket, you need active credentials, you need to have the right tooling, you need to understand the technique, the S for yourself, U2U, blah, blah, blah. And if things go south, usually does, and you have to debug things live, and if you don't understand the technique behind it, you'll not be able to make it work. So my advice is, it depends. If you find the KRBGDT and you're doing a penetration test without stealth at mind, you're not doing a red team or whatever, doesn't matter. Don't do a golden ticket. That's it. It's easier. It's very well implemented. That's it. If you want to be stealthy, Sapphire ticket all the way. That's it. The thing is, for Sapphire ticket, you'll probably need to have active credentials. Well, it depends. It depends on the implementation of the 2 domains you're working with. So the answer, I'm sorry, is it depends.
Okay, thanks.
For stealth purposes, no golden ticket. No golden ticket. That's it.
All right. Any other question? Okay, so I think we can call it a wrap. So we have lunch downstairs if you want, and you can go right away because it's already opened.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Charlie.